UK and how I think it has gone astray. Don't get me wrong, it ain't all bad. I love the crazy fads, like England always buggering up. But you know we're gonna win the World Cup. I'm gonna start my own nation with myself and reservation. I'm gonna start my own nation with myself and reservation.
Keep the red flag flying here.
Hello and welcome to yet another edition of Political Unmuted. It is so good to see you. I can see people arriving in the chat already. Jacqueline, Kirsty, you're so welcome. And we've got somebody back, birthday boy. Paul, it's just so lovely to see you back on the programme. How are things? Are you all right?
Yeah, good. I was touch and go as whether I could have made it tonight because I've been involved in a cycling series that we've put on called the XP series. So it's been good, and my son crashed, but then like a bad one, but really dealt with it incredibly well, and I'm very proud of him tonight. So I'm a very proud dad, also one that's gone through the mill a little bit. But yeah, it's nice to be back, and thank you everyone for the birthday messages and stuff. I'm 21 times 2, so yeah, good stuff.
Well, it's lovely to see you back, and thank you very much, and in control again. But here's the really good thing about it. I can ask him what number it is. What number are we, Paul? What
123. 123.
123. My God, this unbelievable. And we have two real stars this week to tell us all about the topics that we're going to talk about. Jane, our resident star, and Neil. I was congratulating Neil on his beard. Shows your beard, Neil. Just let's see your beard. Oh my God, that is such a beard. I'm a bit disappointed because
if I do this for it, it looks really weird. It sticks out so far down.
Tell you what,
if I need to trim it, I don't know.
Diet, and you can do Santa Claus without any makeup. And sort of nobody's noticed that I've had my haircut. So we're a very elegant and smart group today with amazing beards, all of us, apart from Jay. That is. Let's begin. Jane, moment of your week.
So my moment of the week was an alert from the Samaritans that the government is going to be ending funding for local suicide prevention, which is awful, obviously. So there was an NHS long-term plan that over 3 years the NHS England would provide £57 million to local areas for suicide prevention measures, and that those areas with the highest suicide rates would start to get the money first. So for those areas with the highest suicide rates, that 3 years is now up and that money's run out and it's not being replaced. And by March next year, it will have finished everywhere. So this is awful, really sad. And obviously, this is a complex issue and it takes time to make changes. So some of the things that money had been used for was to train GPs and other non-mental health professionals who are likely to come into contact with vulnerable people, housing officials, employment officials, postal workers, interestingly as well. The Samaritans mentioned how the postie is often, the only point of contact for vulnerable people, which is a different topic, but it just brings home how vital it is that we stop Royal Mail from turning the postal service into a gig economy nightmare. It's a vital service.
Thank you. I find that alarming.
Shocking, especially as the government has just announced that they're going to deliver a suicide prevention strategy, but they haven't told us what that's going to entail yet. But this seems a really odd way to achieve that.
Well, the government uses strategy instead of actually giving any money to things. Neil, your moment of your week, please.
Yeah. Gee, that's horrific. Is that one? Yeah. Mine. Uh, uh, I've got two. I've got two. A big one and a small one. Allied. Sorry. The owners of G4S have pulled out of doing any work in Israel after sustained pressure from the BDS movement, and the company's called Allied Insurance, I think it is, or something like that. And they do lots of work with Israeli police and Israeli prisons, including, of course, detaining Palestinians without charge, etc. And the good news is they've pulled out. But the main reason they've pulled out is because a lot of businesses were starting to step away from wanting to work with the parent company G4S because of of it being tarnished by the terror state that's Israel. And the small one is I'm quite proud to announce I'm going to be one of the official photographers for Durham Miners Gala. No, this it's a small event that takes place in Durham. Only about 100,000 people turn up on the second Saturday of July. Bring your banners, come on up, let's have a party.
Brilliant. Well, you're a brilliant photographer. And can I just say that if you go onto Neil's website, are you taking orders for next year yet?
Pre-sales, yeah.
Calendars.
They're up and ready. Yeah.
I've got the most brilliant activist calendar, which is just beautifully illustrated. And there's also one on trains if you're a bit of an anorak. Paul.
I've got the train from last year.
Moment of your week, Paul.
So I am going to go for one. It's slightly old. It's kind of like a little bit more than a week old, but Green Party Baroness Jenny Jones has tabled a fatal motion for the 13th of June, so that's coming up, to stop the government from using a ministerial decree to overturn a vote in the Lords. And it's the first time ever the government has tried to use secondary legislation to directly overturn the will of Parliament. So the government lost a vote in the Lords on the Public Order Bill to change the interpretation of serious disruptions of other people's day-to-day activities to mean anything more than minor. So basically, the Lords said, no, you can't say that you can arrest people at protests and things like that for serious disruption if your definition of serious disruption is anything more than minor disruption. And the government have tried now to use secondary legislation to overturn the will of the Lords on that one. And it's like, kind of, why? What do you mean? Like, what sort of disruption do you want to happen in order to arrest someone? We've already seen people being arrested for very little. We've seen people actually getting prison sentences for very, very little. It's a really draconian move from our government, and it doesn't surprise me. It doesn't surprise me that there's very few people making any noises about it in mainstream political parties. Green Party are a mainstream political party, but they don't really have the same profile. It's not really being talked about. We're talking about Philip Schofield and Holly Willoughby and what's going on there, and like, honestly, like, I don't know what Philip Schofield's specifically done. If he has like kind of done something with an underage child, then it's absolutely disgusting, whatever. But like, you know, it is not the big story of the moment, let's face it. And I learned that the press are now doing everything by press release. So our media are doing everything by press release. This is why our press is so poor. They're just saying like, okay, they'll send out a load of press releases. Different agencies will send these out, and then the journalists will decide which of these press releases they'll write about. So they're not talking about the news. They're talking about what other people who are in certain agencies want to be the news. This is why our news is so awful. You know, it's pathetic. So, yeah.
Only referred to mainstream media. Independent media tends not to work that way.
We do get influenced, though. Let's face it. we do talk about things that are in the mainstream media quite a lot, and we get dragged into that conversation. Often we try and do other things, particularly early on Socialist Night Live. We used to always try and do things that no one else was talking about, and obviously John brings in things that no one else was talking about, like Iran a couple of weeks ago. But we do get dragged into that mainstream narrative, and it's all coming from press releases from rich people.
Thank you. Horrific. Sort of the some people often say, it's just all these machinations in Parliament. That is really important, people. What we're talking about is a government overturning the will of Parliament to impose its own will using archaic laws. And that's halfway towards tyranny. That is a real overturning of democracy. And it'll be very interesting to see whether this Labour Baroness gets support. And I've heard that Labour don't intend to support her. And if that's the case, then it's just disgusting. Let's move on.
Let's be honest. Labour didn't vote against the final stages of the minimum services strike bill a couple of weeks ago either. There was no whip for them
They've
to
been
be
abstaining.
there, and
Yeah.
very few to vote.
It's disgraceful.
Yeah.
Let's move on.
Now it's time for the big story.
A couple of moments of the week on the chat. Mark Lungley, she's not green. She's not from Mark.
Yes. But
So
she's the Green Party.
She's the Green Party, but she's not physically green. That would be
She's not grot bags.
too weird. Sort of the this week's big story is has already aired actually on Jeremy Vine. Sort of Jane, tell us what's happened and what's been going on, and then tell us what you think about it. It's of course jobless benefits.
So I think Kirsty raised as her moment of the week last week the really disgusting tweet from Jeremy Vine, not from Jeremy Vine, sorry, from his show, written by someone linked to his show on their Twitter feed, which was, I felt, attacking people receiving welfare payments to live on. And that had come a few days after several other mainstream media publications had articles of a similar nature. And then this last week in the Telegraph, they've put out on their Twitter feed related to an article in the paper a calculator. So I'm just going to read what the tweet says because I think you'd have to hear the full terror of what it is. Millions are claiming benefits without ever having to look for work, helping to push the tax burden to hit its highest point since the Second World War. Use our calculator to reveal how much of your salary bankrolls the welfare state. Absolutely disgusting, hate-filled. I don't think there's any way I could have described it that would have got across just how bad it was. So I think it's important to hear the words for themselves. And so lots of people have been commenting on this on Twitter and posting a picture of a Nazi propaganda poster from the National Socialist Party in 1940s Germany, which was basically word for word exactly the same thing, saying, this person who's been hereditary ill from birth is costing the taxpayer 60,000 Deutschmarks. It's extremely similar to what the Telegraph are saying. Really nasty. The Jeremy Vine show tweet was removed after complaints on social media, but I don't think there's been any apology issued. And what this is doing, it's really dangerous rhetoric, scapegoating vulnerable people and distracting from the real reasons why so many people are suffering in this country. But what really bothers me, this just completely ignores people's humanity and their contribution to society, financial or otherwise. So on the financial side, what about the VAT that these people are paying when they use the money they have to buy things? They are paying tax, they're taxpayers too. Welfare includes pensioners as well, people who could have worked all of their lives. It includes unpaid carers who are doing really important work and saving the country a lot of money in the process. And it ignores any sort of social contribution or value whatsoever of the human beings that it's talking about. It suggests that allowing people to eat and live and have dignity, which is all this money is doing. They're not being made rich, they're being given the means to be able to survive physically. It's saying that this is an unnecessary cost and a troublesome burden on others, which is very much in line with the Nazi rhetoric. And we've had over the last, I don't know how many years, certainly over the last 13 years, so many reports of people literally starving to death because they have been sanctioned by the DWP. There have been so many horror stories about the things that have happened to people. The David Clapson, reading about David Clapson will haunt me forever, just to think that a human being could have been treated like that. This poor man, he had been working for 29 years, he'd been a soldier, and he gave up work to be an unpaid carer for his mother. His body was found with absolutely no food in his stomach, with something like £3 in his bank account, no money to buy food, no money to buy electric to put on his meter to keep the insulin that he needed to keep him alive coal. And they found his lifeless body next to a pile of CVs, which just, really highlights the extent to which people are hounded and hounded to that your only worth to society is that if you have a job, a paid job, and you're, being paid money and not claiming any sort of welfare, apart from the fact too that apart that lots of people who are receiving so-called benefits or welfare payments are in work, but they're being employed by corporations who are paying them so poorly that they don't get paid enough to live for going and doing even a full-time job, or for smaller businesses who might like to treat their employees better but can't because they're being squeezed by those huge corporations at the top who are hoarding profits and often taking them offshore. And that should be the real stories that are being told on media, but instead we've got our media focusing, scapegoating, spreading hate and Nazi rhetoric. And we've heard the word Nazi, I've heard the word Nazi used a lot of times over the last few years, and it makes me feel uncomfortable because there are lots of terrible things that have been happening, and I do see some frightening trends and parallels, but I think you need to be very careful how you use that word. But this is the first time where I've really felt that it was appropriate to say it about what I'm seeing with no context, no questions asked. This is absolutely in line with something I would have seen from the Nazis.
I've got some backup questions for you. They're in no particular order. One of the things that was said was that Jeremy Vine, it was a legitimate debate, that there's nothing wrong with talking about this. I mean, what's your answer to that?
That's the really frightening thing, the way that the media is legitimizing such a terrible question. In what other context would you ask this? What they're really saying in different words is, should we just let these vulnerable people starve to death so that we can have a little bit extra? That's what they're saying. And is that a legitimate question? Is that ever a legitimate stance to take? Should we let people die through greed?
I mean, that was the specific question. Sort of that the Jeremy Vine show asked, can we keep funding these people indefinitely? What's the alternative? Idiot. Second question. Is the disability groups claiming that this is driving hate crime? Do you see any evidence of that?
Think I was reading that it's already doubled in the last 4 years. DPAC issued a statement, so we've already seen a steep increase as a result of the constant scrounger, way of talking that's being spread under austerity. And I think what's really dangerous about this is that it kind of sets people up to think there's this sort of person and you're a different sort of person, as if this couldn't happen to you tomorrow, as if you couldn't be, suffer a horrific injury, accident, or illness and be in exactly the same situation. That's why we all pay in, so that we can all support each other. So, there should be a safety net. Any civilized society has a safety net. So that if anything happens to you or your loved ones, they're safe. And if anything happens to anyone else, they're safe. There's a basic level that you don't let people fall through, a basic level of humanity that this government has been stripping away for the last 13 years.
I mean, one of the, to listeners, sort of what I do is I put out a kind of sort of each of the people on the panel do their own research and have their own knowledge, but I always put out some things, and then they sort of some things to look at, so basically they're not blindsided by any questions I might ask. But one of the things I asked the members of the panel to do was to look at a list, a couple of Twitter feeds, Twitter threads, showing the effect upon disabled people today that just having this debate had. I mean, can sort of, when you looked at that, Jane, can you tell our listeners what effect just talking about this was having upon some of the people who were sort of going on and talking about how it had affected them?
I mean, I think it's easy to put yourself aside from it, but when you really think about it, what people are feeling very legitimately is that other people are saying about you, shouldn't we just let people like that die? Aren't these people a scourge on society? Aren't they a waste of space? That's what it doesn't matter how nicely you dress those words up and how you put out your media release. That's how the people on the receiving end of it are feeling. And to be honest, I think that's effectively what they are saying. That's how I'd take it too. It's absolute evil nonsense. But I take it to mean that. What else are they saying? What alternative is there that they're saying? You leave people to die, or you have a civilized society where you don't need people to die. I don't see another option that I'm missing there that they're suggesting. So this is devastating for people who are already suffering, sometimes in great pain, suffering, in agony from mental health issues, which are really destroying their lives. And then on top of that, to have what little self-esteem they might have managed to gather destroyed by this toxicity. It's terrible. It's really terrible that people have been subjected to even hear this kind of speaking, but the hatred that it's going to breed, I just find it very frightening and sad that that's the way we seem to be going as a society, and we just can't let that happen, can we? We can't go down that path. It's disgusting, and we're better than that.
I absolutely agree. The effect upon people's feelings of self-worth, the feeling that sort of the world's got it in for you, are just doing such damage to people's mental health. Last question. Now, the title of our thing was the cost of disability benefits. The Jeremy Vine thing talked about jobless benefits, and sort of, which is slightly different, to give him his due. And I was listening to the news quiz, and the guy there made a joke. He did it in a jokey way, but he pointed out that the number of jobless benefits has gone up since the everybody was given furlough during the pandemic. And in a very jokey way, he suggested that some people were swinging the lead. Now, I mean, how valid a comment do you think that is? And if it is valid, what's your response to that, Jane?
I think it's an absolutely ridiculous comment. A lot of businesses have suffered very much during COVID, and a lot of people have lost their work as a result of that. A lot of self-employed people have lost their businesses that they'd worked hard to sustain. But I think that just the idea that anyone's decided that it's a cushy life on, job seekers allowance, absolutely far from. It's not a nice lifestyle, barely enough money to live on, not enough money to rent anywhere to live in, and on top of that, the constant threat hanging over you of what happens if something happens, what happens if your bus is late and you miss an appointment at the job centre and you end up being homeless and starving to death, because that's how serious, that's David Clapson had missed one appointment and they just stopped everything and he died. He starved to death in a cold house, in a cold flat, and it's life or death for people. Of course, no one's choosing to live like that. And there's a lot of complex issues behind this as well. There's a lot of complex mental health issues for some people, and it's not necessarily easy to find a job. It might, a lot of people who maybe would like to work can't work because they just can't find a job that would, at all, or that would be enough for them to live on, and it puts people in a really difficult position.
Thank you so much. I mean, that's the answer. That there's this myth out there that there's all these people in prison living cushy lives with TV and sort of all these people on benefits watching the television, daytime TV all day and just sitting there living the life of Larry. And it's just not true. It's a desperate life. Neil, why has the government, do you think? I mean, sort of Tom Pursglove, the Minister for Disabled People, was banging on about disability fraud before any of this. And they've clearly stirred up the right-wing mainstream media to run with it. Why is this happening now, do you think?
You know, something I want to say before I answer that question. Jane, you're fantastic there, absolutely brilliant. Hit just about every nail on the head that I would have said. Brilliant. And the thing that I was thinking as Jane was saying what she was saying is that where's the calculator for us to work out how much it's costing us to give tax breaks to the rich? Where's the calculator to tell us how much we're being shafted from companies like Amazon, who's not paying their taxes despite making billions of pounds of profit? You know, there's never calculators for that. They're not the scroungers, apparently. Where's the calculator to tell us how much we're paying for to heat swimming pools of MPs and build duck ponds and stuff like that for them? You know, the rubbish expense that comes through. There's never a calculator for that, is there? You know, now where this is coming from is because, of course, our economy is in a lot of trouble at the moment, because last year we had Liz Truss and Kwasi Kwarteng. Liz Truss was a prime minister that didn't last as long as a cabbage, and they introduced a mini budget, which was, let's call it for what that was. It was a money grab by the rich. That's what that was, and through that now, then we're now having to pay for that. We're now having to pay for it. So whenever the government are in trouble, they look for scapegoats. And when it comes to money, so for example, they're blaming refugees for being in hotels. They don't look at the fact that there's 13 years of failure to invest in the system that's meant that they're now stuck in hotels as a result. And when you talk about people on benefits, it's the same thing. They're an easy target for a right-wing government in particular. If you look back to the financial crash of 2008, which was caused by greedy bankers in America, and it spread over here because we haven't got any regulation of the banks. We still don't have regulations of the banks here now as a result. But what happened there was that we had to pay for it. It was workers who had to pay for it. And by saying, well, actually, we need to be tougher on people on benefits, it creates the illusion that there's people that aren't getting something out of the system that they shouldn't be getting, which doesn't happen. I mean, people are having to wait 6 weeks for a universal benefit claim, for example. And let's not forget, the government are trying the disability benefits at the moment. The government are trying to move those people over onto universal credits, which is a way of trapping people in poverty. That's what that system is. It's the talk about it enables you to find your way out of poverty, and the government keeps saying, work is your way out of poverty. I seem to remember something similar to that on the gate above Auschwitz, saying something very similar.
McFry.
Exactly. Work will set you free. And the government still said we've got a government of eugenics, and the reason they go after disabled people is because the majority of people in society are not disabled, right? Or certainly not disabled to the point where they can't work, should I say? I think that's a fairer way of saying it. So they're an easy target, and it's comes. I mean, I was thinking before the show. You look at the front benches of both the Tory and the Labour Party. How many of those people that enables them to come up with these policies where they attack people, and it's about creating them. It's about creating them and us. That's what this is about. And I stand fully with our disabled brothers and sisters out there that are being attacked. This is dreadful. And do you know what? I urge anybody watching and listening, go and follow Disabled People Against Cuts, DPAC. They're on all the social media platforms. Go and follow them and get your news on this from Disability News Service, which is written by disabled people for disabled people. And let's help to amplify their voice, rather than it being the likes of Jeremy Vine. And let's not forget, this policy of eugenics comes from, and if you remember, there was a guy called, was it Toby Young? Who was an advisor to Boris Johnson. He very much advocated this kind of policy. And it was, oh no, we could never do that. And look at where it is now. It's a political outcome.
Thank you so much. And I'm going to ask Paul to elaborate on that, but two things that we can do about this. And one of them is following DPAC. And the other one is getting your news from the Disability News Service. Thank you. It's invaluable information, Neil. Some really interesting comments on the chat as well. If you just have a look through people, including Laura, more people need to see I, Daniel Blake. Spot on as well. Paul, is this a matter that needs our action? And if so, what can we do about it?
We need to deal with the fact that we've been lied to for so many years about certain things. Like, it's really easy for people to jump on this bandwagon and think somehow that they're the ones that are being ripped off because we're looking after people who need to be looked after, or are we? These disabled people, what work are they providing? Like, we need to have a complete reassessment of what work is. As Jane said earlier on, most of the work that is done is unpaid work, whether that's caring for people, tidying houses, cleaning up, volunteering in your local area, whatever it is. Most things are unpaid, and those things are really important. And a lot of jobs that are very highly paid are either useless or destructive. They actually cause more problems than they solve. Such as writing legislation that will take rainforests away from indigenous people, so that loggers in Brazil can log. You know what I mean? So there's some really, really dodgy work out there that's genuinely destructive for society. And instead of thinking about things like that, we're thinking about, we're giving away money, taxpayer money. That's bullshit. It doesn't exist. Taxpayer money is not a thing. The money is just created by the government, and then they decide who's got too much of it and they tax them back. It's as simple as that. So if you're paying tax, that's because the government's decided that you personally have too much money. They can do that to billionaires, or they can do it to you. They're doing it to you. It's as simple as that. And if you think that billionaires should be paying for disabled people to have a decent quality of life so that they can do the wonderful things that they do, like work, like volunteer, like give support to one another, like, go to community centres and have a nice chat with people, which is all a form of work, it's all a benefit to society, then we could decide that billionaires have got too much money if you want to balance money a little bit that way. Or the government could just say, actually, we just provide this is fine. We know that this social lubricant of money will make people do this work for money, so we'll spend it, and that money will stay in the community because those people are on low pay and they'll have to spend their money in the local community, and it means everyone's richer. But instead they decide tax breaks for billionaires. You can hoard it like some sort of weird dragon from Lord of the Rings, from The Hobbit, and you can sit on your pile of gold that's hidden in the Cayman Islands. That's the choice. And the conversation always comes down to, you're getting robbed by these people who are poorer than you. You're not. You're getting robbed by people who are richer than you, and that hurts, and people don't like to accept it, and I think that's very, very difficult for people.
Thank you. The comment by Jacqueline Hemmings, the book The War on Disabled by Ellen Clifford is something that she recommends. She says it'll make you very, very angry. Thank you for it's horrific what is going on, and thank you to my panel for being so erudite and so principled about it. I feel humbled just listening to you. Let's move on. Now, before we start here, okay, Neil, I'm going to ask you a question in a moment. Have you frozen, Neil? Has Neil gone?
Nope.
Oh, I heard him.
No, I'm here.
Oh, it's sort of.
I'm here.
Right, okay, that's good. I thought you'd frozen. Right, Neil, I know what's going to happen now. I'm going to ask you a question, and you're going to set off on a rant, and I'm going to have to stop you after 5 minutes. All right, you've got 5 minutes to rant. Sort of.
Right.
Is the banning of Jamie Driscoll the end of all hope for the Labour Party?
Before I answer that, I think we should say what it's about first of all. Jamie Driscoll's the mayor of North Tyneside, I think it is, somewhere up there.
North of
Sorry?
Tyne.
North of Tyne, somewhere up there, anyway. And he's by all accounts, he's very, very good. He's a supporter of Jeremy Corbyn and has been throughout. He's got numerous socialist policies and has done lots of very good things in his tenure, such as creating jobs, building houses, and helping to lift people out of poverty as well. He also supports numerous things like, for example, the nationalisation of our utility services, for example, the gas, electric, rail, mail, all that. He supports that. And he's often referred to as the last Corbynista in the Labour Party. And last week, for some strange, bizarre reason, Labour decided that he should not be allowed onto the long list, I think it's called, for the Labour Party, which means that he can't be a candidate in next year's mayoral elections with no reason given, no right of appeal given. It's just Labour have given is because he once shared a stage with Ken Loach. That's the reason given, and because apparently Ken Loach is this anti-Semite, apparently, and because he shared a stage with him, then that's it should be done. So Labour's policies now, it's okay to no platform people. That's their thing. And if you don't know platform them, then Labour will no platform you, which I think is horrendous. I mean, how do you change people's minds if you never engage with them? It's dreadful. So have we lost hope? You see, the thing is, I was thinking about this quite a bit before I came on, and I was thinking that the argument of we should stay in Labour and fight, it's our part, we should fight for it. I think that argument's been, it's been defeated 20-0. It's like, come on, it's like, we need to move on. And it's kind of like, Labour are not campaigning for people like us anymore. They're not interested in our voice. They want the Tory voters. That's who they're going after. What Labour are doing at the moment is creating a one-party nation. That's what they're hell-bent on doing. And anyone Sharon Graham from Unite was her criticism of this said that what Labour are doing is creating basically nodding heads. That's what they want. People go, oh yes, Keir, that's very good. Yes, Keir, of course, brilliant. What you want to do something really bad? Oh, that's really good. It's not a sensible thing to do. I don't think that I've never believed hope comes from the Labour Party. I did under Jeremy Corbyn, I will be honest. I joined because, but Labour are now campaigning on. Are you upset with the Tories? You are, aren't you? Oh, well then vote Labour. And it's not good enough. It really isn't. And to remove someone like Jamie Driscoll from standing just because he shared a platform with Ken Loach, it's like, well, it's laughable. But my final point is this: is that Labour aren't there anymore. They're gone. And the thing is, the hope comes from us. We can, if we stand together, we can overcome this, but we can't do it in the Labour Party anymore. And let's not forget, the Labour Party, show how different they are now. They no platformed John Dunn a couple of months ago from Orgreave Truth and Justice campaign, and they didn't no platform him before he travelled down to, I think it was Staffordshire, I think it was, where I was speaking. They no platformed him 3 minutes before I was due to go on stage. No, that's how far Labour have dropped, and we need an alternative to it, and what that is, I'm not quite sure at the moment. But it ain't the Labour Party anymore. It's the fact that Labour are banning anything that I mean, so Jamie Driscoll, for example, shared a platform with Ken Loach. How dare he stand as Labour again? But yeah, that the MP who shared racist tropes for the GRT community a year or two ago, yeah, she's fine, no problem. But the thing is this: my message to anyone that's been deselected by Labour: stand as an independent socialist. Look what happened in Liverpool and look what happened in Scarborough. It's there. People want socialism. People are prepared to vote for it. If you're true to your heart, they will vote. They won't look at whether it's Labour or not. They'll look at what you're offering. And if you're offering an alternative, they'll vote for you.
God bless you, Neil. That was very lucid and very helpful. Thank you very much indeed. Paul, Jamie Driscoll issue isn't the only damage that's been done to the Labour Party's reputation this week. Can you tell us what other fine messes the Labour Party has got itself into?
Well, there was the Geraint Davies thing, which is, I think he's been accused of some sort of sexual harassment. I'll not comment, it's all alleged at the moment, but it's not looking great. Something that isn't alleged is Neil Coyle. Neil Coyle was allowed back into the Parliamentary Labour Party last week. It was 2 weeks ago, the 24th of May. And he had been suspended because Parliament had found this to be true, that he was suspended for harassing an assistant and racially abusing a journalist. So, you know those things when they pretended that Jeremy Corbyn was racist because they think that he thought things that might be anti-Semitic. It's like, oh yeah, that was all they could come up with about his alleged anti-Semitism and Ken Loach's alleged anti-Semitism, which is, in my view, not true. But all they could come up with was like, oh yeah, we think that deep down that they've got these thoughts. Whereas Neil Coyle actually racially abused someone in Parliament, was suspended for it, and he's like, I was an alcoholic, I was drunk, it's fine. And they've gone, oh, it's not fine, but you can have the whip back. Naughty, naughty. Don't be racist anymore, naughty boy. And that's it. And he's back. And he's back in the Labour Party. So he is what they would deem to be a high-quality candidate because he toes the line of Keir Starmer. And Jamie Driscoll was never going to be allowed to stand as a Labour Party candidate, despite the fact that Tory ministers have praised him for his non-partisan actions, because he's actually tried to work with the legislation that they've brought in, and tried to try to help the people of north of the Tyne. And he's done some excellent things. I know of work he's done on supply teacher co-ops and stuff, and I was involved with that. But this is just something that was bound to happen, was always going to happen. And it's interesting when the other mayoral candidates, I think Andy Burnham and the Liverpool one, Steve Rotherham, have come out in support of him. Now, that is just marked their card. Yes. I think we need to understand exactly what the Labour Party is. It is not the party of the workers. It is the party of the lobby. It is the party that will work for lobbyists. They don't have any beliefs, but they will sell them their beliefs to the highest bidder. That's all they care about.
What's the name? I forget. There's a name of a company which is recruiting Labour MPs to itself, a lobbying company.
I'm not sure specifically this time, but there's been a few, like, so there's a revolving door between like sort of Labour MPs from the right, like Tom Watson, Chukwuemeka, between like things like gambling or AstroTurf and companies. Just this is just a thing that Labour do. Those type of MPs do. They're not really that interested in changing the world. They just want to be like, they should be the kind of people who should have sponsor badges on their shirts, like Formula One races. That's what they should be doing. They aren't for anything other than themselves. They're just ambitious. And this, like, I put out a post earlier on this week, and it seemed to be a lot of people agreed with it. Was that the Labour Party don't want to change the policies. They don't want to change anything. They simply want the people to be doing it to be them, because they really resent people. Do you know what they accuse the left of when they say, you're just jealous? You're just jealous of those rich people who've like done this. It's actually them. It's these liberally centrist people who just say, actually, we had to work hard to get to the same university as you and develop these views that we've got, and you just bought your way in. Well, tell you what, we should be in charge. We're not going to change anything, but it should be us who's in charge, and that's it.
I want to wrap this up in the next couple of minutes, but I'm just going to ask you a very quick question, Paul. Has Starmer broken the Labour Party?
I don't know. Like, I don't think it's necessarily him. Like, there's Peter Mandelson, there's Tony Blair before him. It's been a long rot, and it was, I think, actually, Labour Party under Corbyn might have been the death throes of socialism in the Labour Party, and good. Let's just push it to one side. Like, Ralph Miliband was writing about this years and years ago, that the Labour Party and Labourism is the biggest problem for the UK left. It's the biggest blocker of it.
I mean, that's a segue perfectly into Jane's question, which is sort of, there's many people, it's not just Paul, many people are saying there's no point in being a member of the Labour Party. If you remain a member of the Labour Party, you're just part of the problem. You're not just not part of the solution, you're part of the problem. But if you leave Labour, where is there to go? That's the problem for a lot of people. Okay, I'll leave. What do I do except just sort of give up politics altogether? What can somebody leaving the Labour Party do? Where can they go, Jane?
So I personally think we all need to start looking a bit less at labels, which is the easy thing to do because we've all got very busy lives and other things to think about, and start looking at individuals and their track record and what they really stand for. Because actually, if at the next election we have a Labour Party, which is Richard Burgon and Zara Sultana, Ian Byrne, Beth Winter, Clive Lewis, Belby Addy, and no right-wing Labour people, that's a really good Labour Party. That's something that can really do some decent things. So if you've got really good Labour candidates in your area, and there still are some, then I would say that I would, if you can bear to, I would think about staying in. I'm in a Tory stronghold, and I can't deal with what it's doing to my mental health to have anything to do with Labour anymore. So I've stepped away personally. But if you're strong enough and you've got something worth fighting for, someone to support, who's still in there, or someone like Jamie Driscoll, I think it's worth thinking about fighting for them. But what I would also say is that there are some really good Green Party candidates. The Green Party might not be, the 2017 Labour Party that we wanted, but there's some really good people. Caroline Lucas does amazing things. Jenny Jones, we've just spoken about what she's doing in the House of Lords, and Natalie Bennett's in there as well, who's fantastic. Carla Denyer, the co-leader of the Green Party, seems to be pretty fantastic, seems to have saying some really impressive things on anti-austerity. She'd be a great person to have in Parliament. They made significant gains at the local elections this year and last year, and I think, they might not get a majority in the House of Commons next, but, we get them some more MPs in there and it's a start. We just need good people. There's some okay Lib Dem people, there's some really good independents. if you really would like to do something about Starmer leaving the Labour Party, Akiza is a campaign group who's looking to do something about getting Starmer unseated in his constituency at the next election. Or you can do good things if you don't go align yourself with a political party. You know, you might just want to look for the best candidates at elections. But there's campaign groups like the Good Law Project, NHS campaign groups, the Free Assange campaign groups, ACON, the Renters Union, Generation Rent, Positive Money, doing really good things on the economy, Reprieve, human rights charity, 38 Degrees, an organiser, like quite, you know, they're really good campaign groups who look at a range of issues and have quite innovative ways of approaching them. Or Socialist Think Tank, you know, you can get involved with a group like Socialist Think Tank. There's stuff you can do. And the thing to remember that as much as we dislike a lot of the people in Parliament at the moment, they're subject to lobbying from very powerful forces. So if you get involved with like a small campaign group, you know, working with other people, maybe you can be a counterweight to that and get your point of view through and get them to at least make some changes on some policies. So I think it's really easy to get disheartened right now, but just focus on what is not going to damage your mental health, whether that's a political party or one particular issue you care about and a group of people who share those values, that you can maybe do what you can, whether it's sharing their posts on social media or anything else.
That can we take a clip of what Jane's just said with that list of groups that you can you put that list up somewhere for us to read, and that sort of things you can do if you leave Labour. That was a really important little thing that you were smashing at people on this last topic. Now we find out.
Can I just very, very quickly add that for my 2024 activist calendar, it's going to have a QR code on it. And if you go on that QR code, it's going to have loads of websites, Facebook pages, and groups that you can get involved in. So it's going to be a bit more interactive. And a lot of the groups that Jane just mentioned are already on that list.
Thank you so much. Right, people, I have literally 7 minutes for the last topic. And so Neil and Jane, I'm going to just ignore you. And I'm just going to ask Paul a few questions about it. If Paul runs out of things to say, I might come to you, but sort of we genuinely, I'm going to have to wind up the show. And our third topic, people, is the absolute craziness of the government taking out a judicial review to try and cripple its own inquiry. Paul, tell us all about it.
I honestly don't really know what is going on with this current government. I don't understand what they're trying to do. What I think is happening is they are losing allies and losing control. So I always think inquiries are there in order to kind of like kick the can down the road a little bit. Oh, don't worry, we're going to have an inquiry into it. You know, everything's above board. We'll have an inquiry. So like your Chilcot report, that kind of thing. And then 20 years later, when tempers have like, you know, gone down a little bit, they'll end up coming out with some sort of inquiry, and it'll find in the favour of the government, sort of. It might find little bits and bobs. But I think what's happened is because the Tories have been overturning things so much, and they have such a bad relationship with all of their civil servants, I don't think that they can rig the system the way they used to, because they're all enemies internally. So like they might all be Tories, but they all hate each other. Like, you know, so there'll be Boris Johnson supporters, there'll be Rishi Sunak supporters, there'll be Liz Truss supporters. That they'll be thinking, okay, right, we'll go to this person and they'll give an inquiry. Well, actually, we hate you because you did this person over. So they've all been like stabbing each other in the back so much that they don't have anyone that they can rely on for a stitch up. So they start doing this inquiry and they go, oh no, Rishi Sunak doesn't have that depth of ally. He doesn't have that thing. So it's not like when Tony Blair had everything stitched up and they managed to like, you know, the sexed up dossier of Alistair Campbell and things like that. And apparently he's been forgiven now anyway. He's great. Everyone's Alistair Campbell, such a great guy. Awful sexed up dossier, killed loads of people. Never mind, allegedly. So I just don't think that they have that ability to rig rig an inquiry like they did. So now, in the era of WhatsApp and everything, when you've got access to all these different things, they've gone, oh no, we're going to look absolutely awful here because you've seen Matt Hancock's WhatsApps coming out when he's coming across as a horrible person. They're all disagreeing with one another. There was the eat out to help out stuff when it was like, what did he say? Eat out to get the virus out was what Matt Hancock was calling it. And Rishi Sunak totally did that on his own and decided to do it to try and boost his own profile. So, like, these things are coming out and they're going, oh no, so they're trying to somehow shut up their own inquiry by having another inquiry. Because let's just have an inquiry, because that kicks the can down the road. So if we can have an inquiry into the inquiry, then, maybe they won't find these things out. It's just an absolute mess of ghouls. Maybe what'll save them is people won't care. Because we are so sick to death and so accepting of the corrupt situation in which we live that might be the saving grace of the likes of Sunak and Johnson.
Is it not ironic, though, the fact that this government introduced legislation to limit the powers of judicial review, and now they're turning to a judicial review to help and get themselves off the hook? It's like, come on, it's like, I'm hoping their own legislation kind of kicks them up the arse. No, not kick them up the arse. That makes sense. We want them to do better. I hope it's the absolute final nail in the coffin for them.
It's not though, because the alternative is more ghouls. At the moment, we've got the ghoul party, and then we've got the ghoul party. There is no genuine alternative at the moment, so it's not going to. If the Tories go, they'll just look at them. Like, look at the Tories. Literally, there is a Tory who is a Labour whip. Like, he is a Tory, and he is welcome in the Labour Party, and people who actually care about the Labour Party aren't.
Jane, does anybody give a damn about this? I mean, we certainly do, but does anybody really? Could anybody really care less? I mean, this is what Paul was saying, that they're going to get away with it, because really people just want it all to go away. They want to forget COVID and get on with their lives, don't they?
Public are tired, but the families of those who've lost loved ones during the pandemic still feel very strongly about this. A lot of people's lives have been really devastated. A lot of people are suffering from long COVID, which has put them in a situation where they can't live the lives they were living before. They've lost loved ones under absolutely unforgivable circumstances that should never have happened under any civilized government. So there's a group of us, I think, within the country who won't forget or forgive this, but I think we're just, as a country, so tired of all the sensational shock news all the time. We're exhausted from it. Scandals every day from this government, practically. So perhaps they will get away with it, but we just need to try. I hope they won't.
Thank you very much. A couple of comments on the chat just before I leave you. Mark Lungley, you can see I used to have a radio show. John, there's no news at the top of the hour. You can overrun. We do every week, Mark. Every week. So if you don't keep to that hour, you just get sloppy about things, and people bitter on. To keep within time limits is a good thing. The other thing is Jacqueline Hemmings is surprised I haven't been expelled for associating with someone who appeared in a Ken Loach film. I know that was Laura in a Ken Loach film, Paul? Sort of.
Yeah, we haven't seen it yet. I might be in it somewhere.
Yeah.
And
well, I've certainly
Heather Wood, she's been in one.
What is that?
One with Jamie.
One with Lynn Gibson as well.
Yeah.
Don't tell them. Don't tell them, Jacqueline.
The sad thing is though, like, did you see John McDonnell's tweet when he said that he was like, what are you going to expel me? And Luke Akehurst's reply was, "Don't tempt me." Look who's running the Labour Party. That horrible little man. He's awful. He's full of hatred and gammon, and he's a gammony little man, and nah.
I'm going to interrupt you and then bring the show to a close. I'll hand over to you. But I think the foulest thing they've done to Jamie Driscoll is that they want rid of him because he's a socialist. We all know that. But they're trying to tell him that it's because he made a serious error of judgment in talking to Ken Loach about films in public. And then they go on and they're saying that really he was a waffly man who didn't know his job, a low-quality candidate, and we want a high-quality candidate in this election. And they don't just chuck you out. They destroy your feeling of self-worth. They try and ruin your reputation and damage you. They are scum. And really, we sort of, the sooner we can get them out of the Labour Party, the better chance we have of having a Labour Party that might actually be worth voting for. Anyway, here we go.
Can I just say that Keir Starmer shared a platform with a war criminal? You know, Tony Blair.
Keir Starmer shared a platform with Ken Loach. Right. That's the end of the show today. Hasn't it been brilliant? Aren't these people brilliant? And some of their comments when they get going, it's just so lovely. It's been such a privilege.
We're only brilliant because of you, because of the work that you do.
I don't think so. So I'm going to draw it to a close. Thank you, Justiciars, for listening to us. See you next week for another edition of Political Unmuted. But I'm going to leave you now and hand over to Paul for the closing credits. Paul.
Go and do stuff, leave the Labour Party, ignore them, tell everyone that they're just weaponising anti-Semitism, because that's what they're doing. They don't care about Jewish people. They really, really don't care. If they did care about Jewish people, they wouldn't make this stuff up, because this has been horrible for a lot of Jewish people that I know. So tell people that. It's true. Tell the truth. Don't be scared. Stop looking over your back the entire time. Honestly, it's the most liberating thing in the world not being in the Labour Party. So don't be part of it. That's my advice. But do join Socialist Think Tank if you want to keep up to date with our stuff. Do support independent media such as the IMA, the Independent Media Association. Do spread the word to your family and friends and tell them the truth about economics and all the other things that we talk about all the time. Because honestly, we just get lied to all the time and we're too tired to do anything about it. Stick together as well. And you know what? If you disagree with someone on the left, you're not their enemy. You're just disagreeing with people. It's a normal human thing to do. I disagree with people all the time and manage to stay their friend. And I think we can all do that. So get yourself off things like Twitter where you're arguing over things there to divide you, and do things in the real world where you talk to each other and support one another in real life, because you know what, we've got loads in common, and I'm not doing this nonsense more in common thing. I actually genuinely mean it. Take care, everyone. Have a lovely, lovely evening. Stick up for each other, and we will see you all very, very soon.
Bye-bye.
Keep the red flag flying here.